Okay.
We on
Good
it?
morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. So we have a good agenda. I hope everybody has a copy of that in front of them and are able to follow along. And hope everyone is doing well through this new wave of pandemic that has certainly changed the past year. So with that,
Okay, can I just ask those that have their microphones live to mute and then just unmute when you're ready to speak?
I'm not sure who it might be. Gib, you'll have to know how to mute.
I'm just sitting in front of a computer here now. Where do I find mute? There's a little electric.
You'll see a microphone, Gib, right at the top right of the screen. You should see a little microphone beside the camera. If you just click on it, it mutes you, and if you click again, it unmutes you.
It's not at the top, it's at the bottom.
Oh,
Right.
depends on which top or bottom. There's a little microphone icon.
Well, doesn't look like a microphone to me, but then of course I don't look at microphones very often. On the right hand, anyway, all I can see there's a dismiss, and then above that there's a little bat, like that's not a microphone.
Okay, Gib, doesn't sound like a lot of noise coming from your end, so I think as long as you're not speaking, we'll give it a try.
I think the little
Okay.
bat is the microphone.
That bat? You mean like the
Well, I don't
panel?
know. I'm kind of old school, and it kind of looks like a bat to me too.
If I push it and I get nothing, I'm dismissed for the day.
I think you're good, Gib. So as long as you're not speaking, I think we're fine.
Okay, good.
Okay, so we're going to continue on. So right now, again, thank you for everybody for joining us. So we're looking for a couple things that we need to rearrange on the agenda. So we're going to, I'm going to just do that now. So we're going to move 7A to 3 just before 4. I'm just going to slide in there so Angela can come in and speak to us. And also there's an addition to the supplemental agenda, a second project that is looking for extension. So with that, I'm looking for an approval of the agenda and supplemental, if any.
So approved. Good.
I would second that. I'd second that, Glenn.
Thank you. It is helpful if you say your name before you move in second, just so we're not always familiar with your voice if you're on the phone.
Yeah.
So that's great. Thank you. All those in favor, oh, anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition, I'll move that carries. So we're on to a declaration of conflict of any interest. Based on today's agenda, is there any reason for a conflict of interest from any of the members?
Jackie, it's Elizabeth here. I will just recuse myself from the discussion on the Conservation Authorities Act.
Yeah, I think that's one of the phones. I'm just going to mute all the phone lines. Hang on.
Sorry, did you get that, Jackie?
Yeah, so Tara, I heard you're going to recuse yourself from the clean water, the Conservation Authority discussion. I've heard that. Thank you.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, just given my positioning here, that's perfect.
Thank you. And Doug, did you have something you wanted to say?
Doug just hopped off, so
okay.
Hopefully we can get him reconnected.
Okay, so thank you, Tara. That's noted. Hearing no others, we'll move forward. Thank you.
Sorry, Madam Chair, if I may, I think that was Elizabeth making those comments about the Conservation Authorities Act, not Tara. This is Tara here.
Thank you very much.
No worries.
Thanks. I wasn't sure if I was hearing properly. Thank you.
No, my apologies. Just okay. Is Angela ready to come on?
I don't see her on yet. Angie, you connected? Okay, maybe we can, let me just give, I'll give her a text. Carl, can you text Ange for me, please? Just see if she's joining us. So we can move ahead, Madam Chair, if you'd like, to the minutes while we wait for Ange to connect.
Okay, so we're on to item number 4, so request for approval of the Clean Water Committee meeting minutes of September 14th. Hope everybody's had a chance to review them. What I'm looking for.
I saw Andre.
Andre moves.
Yes.
We have a seconder.
Give a second, that if you need somebody.
Yeah, Michelle, did you put your hand up? Did I see
Yes.
your hand? Okay.
I did, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Any discussion, errors, omissions? Hearing none. Anyone opposed? Hearing no opposition. That's carried. Thank you. I'll check with you, Rhonda.
I haven't seen Ange come on yet, so we can maybe keep going with our staff update and come back to her when she's connected.
Okay, well, I'm just going to ask
Okay,
there
great.
any-
But Bill is joined as well, and I saw Terrence as well.
was there any business arising from those minutes?
I had none noted unless there are any questions from committee members.
I'll ask again from committee. Hearing none, we'll move on to item 6, which is a staff update PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, good morning, everybody. My name is Kat Watson. I'm a Water Resource Specialist with South Nation Conservation. I just wanted to update you on some of our surface water quality monitoring programs that went forward this year. We have a couple partnerships, one with the City of Ottawa for the Ottawa Baseline Program, and that has about 12 surface water sites. Sampling continued as planned for that program. Our other partnership was with the province of Ontario, the provincial water quality monitoring network. Due to the pandemic, that sampling was suspended for, I guess, most of the year. The lab did open in late October, so we were still able to collect a couple samples as part of that program. These sampling programs are very important to contribute to catchment studies and planning activities. So fingers crossed that monitoring programs will continue in 2021.
Does anyone have a question on that regards to Kat, the monitoring?
Gib Patterson may have a question.
Sure, go ahead, Gib.
You mentioned the cooperation with the City of Ottawa, and you had a number of sampling locations.
Yep.
Now, the drain known as the Finley Creek Municipal drain.
Yep.
Do you have monitoring spots on it?
We do. We have two, actually. One right within the Finley Creek community at Kelly Farm Drive, and then the other along Blay Road.
Okay. And you can see that, you can see the one on Blay Road. Now, that monitors what information, anything to do with the quality of that water?
Yeah, so that program samples that program samples metals, nutrients, E. coli, general chemistry, and so basically we go in and we grab samples, submit them to the City of Ottawa lab, and then those parameters are analyzed there.
Okay, so how does one find out what the quality of that water is at Blay Road?
Well, we can share that data with you, or we can. I believe there's about 10 years worth of data at that station.
I only the last couple of years, well, maybe 5 or so, but we're just checking because there are, as you know, I own some land along there, and sometimes people sneak in onto our property and sometimes dump things there, and we keep it so they can't. But I just want to know if any of the runoff from that into that drain, which it does drain our property. So I just want to know if that gets checked or not.
So Gib, perhaps we can have a conversation, or yourself, with Kat. Kat, if you could reach out to Gib afterwards to find out what kind of data he's looking for.
Sure.
And you can
That would
that.
be wonderful.
Yep, I can do that.
I have a question for you, Kat, in regards to the monitoring. You've indicated that there's been an interruption in monitoring due to COVID and lab closures. How will that impact results or, sampling going forward?
So on some of those provincial stations, we do have a fairly lengthy period of record, in some cases up to 50 years. So there will be a bit of a gap. This will be a gap here.
Okay. Thank you. I'll let you continue.
Okay. Here, this is a picture of our newest climate station that we installed just southwest of the community of Greeley. And I'll take a couple minutes on this slide just because we received funding from the Eastern Ontario Water Resources Program for this station, and I do have a report later in the meeting. So at this station, we're collecting all-weather precipitation, so that includes snow, rain, sleet, ice. We're collecting information on soil moisture, temperature, barometric pressure, humidity. All of that data is collected at either 15-minute or hourly intervals and then transmitted over the GO satellite network. And our database system within our office captures that information within the hour of it being transmitted. This data is really important for our flood forecasting and warning, for our modeling, and as well as for our low water response programs. And the reason we approached EWRP for this station is that there was a gap, a geographic gap within our network for the collection of this type of data, specifically within the city of Ottawa. So we filled that gap. I know this station actually is on the border of South Nation and Rideau Valley jurisdiction. So I know our friends at Rideau Valley will also be filling in a data gap by using this station. And I did want to point out that we forwarded photos to FTS, the folks that the supplier of the equipment, and they had commented to us that it's one of the best installations that they've seen. So, and they've requested some photos that they can feature. So I don't know if anybody has any questions on that.
Hi, it's Doug Thompson here, Chair Jackie. It's south west of Greeley. Where exactly is the location?
So it's pretty close to, I'm just trying to think of the road. It's close to Marcella Drive. It's actually on an SNC property.
Yes. Yeah.
Yes, so we can access it. We do have a little right of way, and it's there is. I should note also that there is a Trans-Northern pipeline that is fairly close, and those folks were really excellent to deal with in getting the station installed and helping with the installation actually. So.
Yeah, that's the land that South Nation bought. It's just off of Grays Creek Road and Marcella Drive. So. Yeah, I know where that is. Thanks very much.
Yeah.
So, Kat, when did it come online and start collecting?
So it came online. It's been, I guess, about 2 weeks now that we've had it live.
And any troubles? Did it start up good, or has it?
Nope.
Been...
It's been wonderful. We were able to connect right away, and yeah, we've been getting good data out of it.
That's good to hear. Any other questions of Cal in regards to this slide? Okay, thank you. Moving on.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Brent Harbers. I work as a biologist at South Nation Conservation. So an update on some work we did this summer. Our municipal drains in our province are rated based on flows and the fish within those drains, and that allows them to be awarded a classification so that they are then managed and maintained properly so as not to impact fish and fish habitat. So we were lucky enough this summer to have some funding from Fisheries and Oceans Canada, or DFO, to sample some drains in our watershed that did not currently have a rating or classification on them. So we went out, did some work, and ended up sampling in 9 different drains, along with the municipal drainage superintendents helping us out when speaking with landowners and explaining the process. And like I said, 9 drains were sampled, and now these can be applied to class, and their maintenance work in the future can be streamlined now that we know a little bit more about what's in those drains.
Thank you. Brent, I have a question for you. What are the the 9 drains within the watershed? I know the photo here shows Mill Creek, but just for the purpose of others.
Yes, thank you. 9 drains, 2 were within the city of Ottawa near Greeley that we did with the drainage superintendent for that area, Mr. Eric Kreiderman. And then we had the remaining drains were Mill Creek near Lorignal, and I think there were 5 or 6 branches off of Mill Creek that we also did at the same time, so as to have that entire drainage system classified all at the same time to add to the consistency of that process.
Okay, is any other questions of Brent in this regard? I can't see everybody at once, so if there is, just speak up. No? Brent, I have another question. Is there hopes to continue this program?
Yes, there is. So we've been receiving this funding. I believe this was the 5th year in a row from DFO. We have a good partnership with them, and we've been very successful getting funding each year. So the hopes are if they award funding next year, we'll be applying again to do more drains. We do have over 1,000 municipal drains in our watershed, and if they're not already rated, some of them require updating. So we'll continue that work as long as there's money given out.
Okay, thank you, Brent. I'll let you continue.
Okay, so the Endangered Species Act, recently there were some regulatory changes proposed on the Environmental Registry of Ontario for this act. Essentially, the main change is to create a new provincial agency under the act that will oversee a new fund that's going to be named the Species at Risk Conservation Fund. Essentially, this will see that agencies or individuals or municipalities that wish to harm species at risk or species at risk habitat will have the option to pay into this conservation fund, and then these resources, all the money that goes into this fund will be pooled on a provincial basis and will be then applied across the province for habitat restoration projects to help these 6 species that are shown on the side here. So it will provide more of a holistic provincial look at applying habitat restoration for these species at risk in Ontario. So these 6 specifically were chosen because they're most often impacted by development in the province. So it looks like where the plan is that these ones will benefit the most from this type of system.
Any questions in this regard for Brent?
Yes, Brent, it's Andre. I do have approximately 30 butternut trees, which I did plant over the years on my property. Is there anything that I should do in regard to registering them or whatever?
Good question. We might want to hook you up with one of our foresters who's actually butternut health assessment. They have qualifications to do that kind of work, but I don't believe you have to do anything in terms of registering unless you plan to cut or harm them. Now on that, there are special rules about trees which were planted by a landowner themselves. So like I said, we might want to hook you up with one of our foresters. You could probably speak to that more specifically than I can.
Okay, and this will be through the South Nation?
Yes.
Yes, we do have staff who are qualified and have undertaken courses to assess and talk to those regulations about butternuts.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anyone else with questions for Brent in this regard? Hearing none, we'll move to next slide.
Okay, Andre, I'll get Cheyenne to chat with you regarding your trees. Just a note for those on the phone, I have muted all of the phone lines. We were getting some feedback. So again, to unmute yourself to speak, it's *6. And I just want to take a few minutes for the rest of the slideshow to provide some updates to the committee. As you know, our June and September agendas are very heavy with project review, so we haven't had a chance really to bring you too many staff updates. And I just wanted to give you a few highlights of some of the great partnerships that we were still able to achieve even in these rather interesting times with COVID. So the next couple of slides are some highlights on some partnerships and work that's been completed over this past year. So the first one is a project we've been working with local First Nation communities out of Akwesasne and with Plenty Canada, which is an Algonquin not-for-profit organization, and with the Algonquin community out of Pikwakanagan. We were approached early in the new year to participate in a reconciliation and climate change planting project, and we've been working with a working group since about March, working to build relationships and to work towards this reconciliation project. So South Nation was involved with Plenty Canada, Mohawk Council of Akwesasne's Environmental Department, Forest Ontario, and Ontario Power Generation to see this project to fruition. On September 23rd, we planted what we named the Healing Place on a South Nation property that is located just north of Shanley, down in Edwardsburg Cardinal. And one of our partners, Forest Ontario, gave us a great 2-page spread highlighting the project in their Treeline magazine in the October issue. So the group continues to meet to continue building our relationship. And now that the site has the trees planted, we're working on communications piece that will accompany the site so that folks, when they visit, can understand what trees were planted, why they're culturally significant to the different First Nation communities, and other information about First Nation communities and early settlement in our area. So that will be future projects that we're working on. But if you're down north of Shanley, you'll be able to see the site. It's quite easily viewed from County Road 22. Are there any questions on that one before I move on?
Okay. Rhonda,
yes.
Wondering what acreage of that site is?
It's actually quite large. I don't remember the exact number, but it's somewhere around 80 acres. So it was, there is a resident that the property surrounds, but it was an old farm. So to the south is some grassland area, which actually we're maintaining for grassland species. And then the northern area around this site was also replanted with tree seedlings this spring. So it's Shanley Road and County Road 22. It's pretty much right in that corner block. For a number of years, the Watershed Evaluation and Benefit Management Practices is a partnership we've had with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. Over the last several years, one of our staff, Naomi Langlois, who's in our stewardship team, has been assisting David Lapin with doing vegetation surveys at the website, which is located on the La Flèche farm just near St. Albert. So once again, late summer, Naomi went out and did the survey for Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. So they are looking at some research around buffers. So we assist in that project annually as requested.
Any questions? Thank you, Rhonda.
We've had a couple of opportunities to build new partnerships with municipalities as well this year. We were approached by Russell Township. The East York Creek runs near a subdivision and is along a very well-used recreational path, and the creek itself is experiencing a lot of erosion. So the municipality did approach us and came with some money on the table to actually do some restoration work on this site. So this year we did plant trees to improve the streamside buffer. We have submitted an application to the Great Lakes Local Action Fund to do some erosion repair in partnership with the municipality in 2021. Again, to make sure that not only is the trail safe, but that stream bank and buffer are stable in that area that's, again, very well used by local residents.
Any questions?
South Nation was once again successful with an Ontario Power Generation Biodiversity project. So we were approved early this year for another 3 years. And we're focusing our efforts on South Nation properties, one being J. Henry Tweed Conservation Area, which is in Russell Township. We had started work in J. Henry Tweed under our final year last year of our previous OPG agreement, and we have the opportunity now under this new 3-year agreement to continue the work that we started. So there is a small creek that runs through the park itself that has a lot of erosion, and what we're seeing in the conservation area is a lot of fluctuating stream flows. So there was kind of these surges of water coming through the creek that we spent some time this year under the OPG funding to actually track down and source where these little surges were coming, because they were causing stream bank erosion. So we worked with the municipality to look at actually a stormwater facility that's upstream of the park and to do some recommendations for the municipality in regards to that stormwater pond. So now that we have an idea of where the water's coming from, that will help our engineering team move into year 2, which is actually designing some erosion protection for some additional areas along the stream, as well as some tree planting on that site. We're also doing some ash tree removal and replanting on a couple of South Nation properties in the city of Ottawa. These are areas that are heavily have large ash populations that are heavily infested with emerald ash borer. So we know that we're going to lose a significant portion of these forests moving forward. So we're looking to do a cut and replant of some native species to reestablish some forest cover in those areas. We're also looking at doing some buckthorn removal, which is an invasive species on those properties as well. And we're doing some targeted planting to hopefully encourage the native species to come in, close up that canopy, and reduce the buckthorn infestation. So those properties are one near Osgood and the other one on the Garland Side Road. In 2020, and we're wrapping up in 2021, we started a partnership with both United Counties of Prescott-Russell and the United Counties of Stormont, Dundas, and Glengarry to complete a natural heritage planning study. Again, our team is working with the municipalities to map things like connective features across the landscape. So they're finalizing the draft maps right now, and we will be doing public consultation and engagement over the winter. So once that has been firmed up, we will share the consultation opportunities with committee if you would like to review and provide some input. The final product will be used by both Prescott-Russell and SDNG in their official plans as they move them forward.
Any questions in that regard? Just to note that we all sort of represent somebody on this committee, so both agricultural, I think, and industry and municipalities. I think it's very incumbent on us to be part of those conversations around what's been designated as well. So thank you. Go ahead, Rhonda.
A couple of updates on our tree planting. We had a very successful tree plant this year, despite the challenges of planting during the beginning of the pandemic. This year, we did a combination of South Nation staff planting, as well as using a contractor for some of our larger sites, including the La Rose Forest. So we planted about 170,000 trees over the course of the spring plant, as well as a couple of additional projects that we completed this year with other municipalities. The tree planting numbers are looking very strong for 2021. We actually set an ambitious target of 200,000 trees for 2021, and we have about 176,000 ordered. And we expect with the over-the-counter sales that typically come in over the winter that we are well on our way to hitting that 200,000 target for spring of 2020. Sorry, 2021.
Any questions in regards to that? Rhonda, we
Rhonda,
sorry.
It's Andre. I understand you may be running short of trees. Like you said, you hope to plant it 200,000 roughly, but that I've been told maybe you might be running out of trees, eh?
I just actually saw an email this morning from one of our forest techs. So we're waiting to hear back on inventory from our local nursery, which is Ferguson Forest Center. So once we know exactly what's available at Ferguson, we may need to source from some additional nurseries this year, just given the number of seedlings on order. So there are about 4 nurseries across the province that are approved for the Forest Ontario 50 Million Tree Program. So we like to source local as much as we can, but we probably will need to bring in some trees from one or more of those other nurseries this year, depending on species that folks are ordering.
Okay, thank you.
So Rhonda, I have a question for you. With the drought this past summer, any potential impacts on the 176 that was, or 170,000 that was planted this year?
So part of our work with Forest Ontario is we do complete fall survival assessments. We complete them in year 1 of the planting. So anything planted this spring had a survival assessment this fall. We also do survival assessments on the year 2 and year 5 tree planting. I haven't seen the numbers. There was one species, which I'm not sure if it was a hardwood or a softwood, that didn't do so well because of the drought. But overall, I think most of the sites were okay. But there was one species that didn't fare as well as we hoped it would. So the good news under the 50 million tree planting program is we can apply for refill on sites that have less than, I believe it's 60% survival. So there are some sites that we've already flagged for replant if the funding is available.
Thank you.
We had to change up a little bit our community free tree pickups this year. So about 2 years ago, under our Forest Conservation Initiative, we started partnering with municipalities to provide free seedlings to residents. So we partner with each of our 16 municipalities and our 3 wards in the city of Ottawa. Normally, we would go to events that the municipality is hosting, and folks would show up and grab a tree. This year with COVID, we had to change it up a bit. It took a little bit more coordination, but actually ran quite smoothly once we had it set up. So individuals that were interested registered online. Once the orders were filled, we provided a scheduled pickup time for folks to come and pick up their seedlings, and it was basically a drive-through service where they would drive up, our staff would hand their tree seedlings to them, and they would drive off. So it worked very well, although it took a little bit of extra setup initially, and it's probably a system that we're going to continue to use because it worked so well this year. So need necessitates some innovation sometimes, so finding ways to make things work. And my final slide is a highlight on a project that I spoke of last year. It's our Eco Action demonstration sites. You may recall there are 4 sites we planted across South Nation Conservation that really focused on building buffers using edible tree species. So we have one in Navan, one in St. Isidore, one near Brinston, and one in Castleman. Ontario Power Generation actually highlighted the Mark Bercier site in St. Isidore, and Chris Craig, our forest tech, is featured in the video talking about that project on Ontario Power Generation's Power of Nature series. So that's available through the OPG website. So again, a great opportunity to highlight some of the work that we've done in partnership with OPG in our watershed. And that is the last slide, Madam Chair.
This question, Rhonda, were you going to play the video, or you're just
the audio can be a bit tricky when I'm screen sharing. So what I can do is I can share the link out to the committee. If you're interested in seeing it, I'll flip it to you by email.
Okay, that would be, thank you. Any other questions of Rhonda on what she's presented today? Hearing none, we'll move forward. So is Angela back on?
I just heard her come into the office, but I don't think she's connected yet. So when I see her come in, I can let you know.
Okay, so then we'll move on, continue on to new business with item B. I'm going to say request for approval for the Eastern Ontario Water Resource Program financial statements as of October 31st, 2020. And these are on, if you're following along, 11 and 12 pages.
Great. So this, again, is the standard financial statement update that we bring to you for the Eastern Ontario Water Resources Program. So I'll draw your attention to page 12, which summarizes expenses as of the end of October and a forecast out to the end of this year with a projection on carryover for a few of the projects. Each of the projects that you'll note are requesting carry forward will have that resolution in the upcoming reports that will require your approval. So this statement is assuming that those funds will carry forward. So we're not expecting any surplus funds outside of the grants for Eastern Ontario Water Resources Program. So spending out fully the project management and committee expenses. The Children's Water Festival will have a request to move funding forward to 2021, which you'll hear from Lexi shortly. The Northcaster and the development of groundwater surface water interaction constraint mapping, Kat will give you an update on those projects shortly. They are complete. Jason will provide a low impact development project update. Again, that project is complete. The UCPR floodplain mapping was a special project coming to us from United Counties of Prescott Russell. That project is complete and money spent out. Kat will update you on the South Bear Brook catchment study at the same time she talks about Northcaster. There is a small amount requested to carry forward for that one to finish the year one report in early in the new year. Chris Kinsley will talk to us about the lagoon effluent tree irrigation and evapotranspiration study. He is requesting a carry forward of funding on that one. We have Alex will give us an update on the work that they're doing on the karst bedrock aquifers in Eastern Ontario. That one is complete and we'll be looking for final approval. Kat showed you the slide of the climate station. So again, that project is complete and we'll be looking for approval. And the water budget project with South Nation Conservation, we're looking to carry forward the funding. And again, the report is coming on that. So anticipate 19,151 carrying forward. Again, those are reports that are coming up next on the agenda.
So the recommendation is the Clean Water Committee approve the Eastern Ontario Water Resources Program 2020 financial statement as of October 31st, 2020. I'm looking for a mover.
I'd so move.
Could you state the name, please?
Lawrence.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Gib Patterson, seconder.
Is there any questions in this regard? Understanding the presentations will follow on each of these. Hearing none. Anyone opposed to the motion? Hearing none. I'll deem that carried. Okay. We're on to status on Angela.
I don't see her on yet, so we can probably move to Lexi.
Okay, so we're on request for approval for the Eastern Ontario Water Resources Program project, starting with one, which is the Eastern Ontario Children's Water Festival update. That's page 13 through 15. And Lexi, you're on.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Lexi. I work at the River Institute, and we run the Eastern Ontario Children's Water Festival. With COVID this year, at the start of the year, we had tentatively canceled our spring festivals, so Spencerville and Castleman, in the hopes that we would be in a position to host all three of our regular festivals in October when we normally host the Cornwall Water Festival. And after meeting with all of the other coordinators for the other children's water festivals in Ontario, we kind of unanimously decided that we weren't going to be hosting any in-person festivals for 2020, but that we would all like to move to a virtual format for 2021, which each of the festivals are going to be doing kind of in a different way. We are going to have a collaborative effort where each of the different water festivals will produce a video station, and that can be shared with all of the other festivals. So I will be receiving, I think, 5 or 6 different video stations from other festivals that we can add to what we would like to do. which will be really nice. It'll be kind of like a freshening for the festival to receive some stations from other festivals. The plan that I'm hoping to do for this coming year is to build the Water Festival its own website, because currently it's just a page on the River Institute website, and I think to do the virtual format, it'll be best to make the Water Festival its own website. So we're going to start by doing that. And then normally all of our Water Festival stations are hosted by high school students who attend the event in person. We give them a little training. They learn about the water stations, and then they host the stations. So we'd like to have that continue even for the virtual format. So the hope is to drop off the kits from the Water Festival to different area high schools and have the students film them doing an interactive version of the stations. And then we'll host those on our website, and we'll have teachers register as they normally would for the Water Festival, but they will be streaming our film stations in the classroom. We're also hoping to maybe do a few stations that we can drop off as kits to the elementary schools that they can do in the classroom, so they're still getting kind of a hands-on interactive component and not everything is solely through a video feed. But that seems to be kind of the consensus from the other water festivals, that that's the direction we're going to move in for 2021. And then hopefully 2022 we'll be back to in-person festivals, but this virtual format that we'll have put together will be accessible for any teachers in the future, even when we have the in-person festival, so that teachers who maybe missed the registration, as we normally have like a limit on how many students we can bring, and once we reach that limit, we could actually start having teachers register for this online format so that we can reach more students in future years. So it's not all bad, hopefully.
Thank you, Lexi. Is there any questions in this regard to Lexi? Hearing none. Sounds like you've gone over it with some great thought on how to engage and keep this going forward. And I think myself personally that having, as we move out of COVID and having the opportunity to interact within the school systems, both virtually and in person in the future, will benefit the program very well. So good job to everyone who's working through this and trying to find new ways to interact and teach.
Thank you.
I see Angela on. Rhonda, did you want to interrupt?
Yeah, we just need a motion to approve carrying forward the funds for this project.
Sorry about that. Thank you.
Gib Patterson, being a former teacher, would approve that, because the more that I remember while I was teaching, that kind of help is always welcome. So I would move that it be carried.
Lawrence speaking, and I would second that.
Thank you.
Okay, and we can go back to Anne.
Anyone opposed? Hearing none, I'll deem it carried. So, welcome, Angela. Nice to see you.
Oh, good morning, everyone. For some reason, I didn't have this in my calendar, so I apologize for that, and was doing a few other things, but I'm certainly glad to see so many faces I haven't seen for a while. Gib and Lawrence, and I'm sure there's all kinds of others on the line. So nice to see so many of you, and I'm just going to actually close. Well, I think I may close my blind here. It's a little bit bright, and then I can get into the presentation. Give me one moment. It's nice to have a little bit of natural light in a November that's been a little bit gray. There, that might be a little bit better. Good. So first, I hope that everyone is doing well, given what's been a rather challenging year on a number of fronts, but here we are, and getting ready to celebrate the last day of November as we move into December. And I want to thank Chair Jackie and Rhonda for giving me some time this morning to talk to you about Bill 229. And so many things have been happening very, very quickly on Bill 229. You may know that on November 5th, the provincial government introduced the COVID Recovery Act, and under it, Schedule 6 introduced a number of changes for conservation authorities. Next slide, please. Now, the government has now introduced a standing committee period. So the first day of standing committee hearings in Toronto are today. So there'll be standing committee hearings from on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday of this week. And next slide, please. The standing committee will hear a number of representations and submissions from groups across Ontario. Jackie, I'm not sure if you're successful. Was OFA successful in securing a spot? I'm sure they were.
Yes, this afternoon.
So you're on this afternoon, and a number of organizations that I've heard from have gotten a spot, including Conservation Ontario and a number of conservation authorities in the GTA as well. We here have been, we've throughout the process, there's been a number of times changes have been proposed to the Conservation Authorities Act, and we've received a number of letters of support. And I'm just going to repackage those and send them back to our local MPPs. But I think right now most of the work on the ground is to figure out if Schedule 6 will be amended in any way, or if it will be passed by the government as proposed. So lots happening on this. Some of the changes proposed to the Act include that municipalities must appoint municipal councillors to the Board of Directors. So there's the removal of a public representative option. And, you know, from our own board, we do have a number of former elected officials and other citizen appointments that have served on our board. So of our 12, we currently do have 5 citizen appointments. So that is something that's proposed to potentially be removed as an option. And I know that AMO has come out with some different statements on this, and this is why we kind of have let things that impact either municipalities or partner organizations, we've let our partners champion what they think is the best approach to conservation authority governance. So we have spoke with a lot of people, but in terms of taking a position ourselves, we've simply put our ideas on paper. There's a new sort of focus for municipalities to act more on the respective interests of their participating municipalities versus the watershed as a whole. There's some discussions about that as being a novel type of approach to corporate governance. As well, the minister may appoint an additional member to the board that represents the agricultural sector. And again, I think that OFA may be making submissions or have some thoughts and ideas on that approach for appointments, should that stay in the Act. Next slide, please. Our programs and services, now you'll remember this from a number of different amended edits that have been proposed, that the provincial government has sort of asked that conservation authorities focus on what they consider to be 4 key areas. So one being the risk of natural hazards, the other one being, oh, there's an interesting slide. I don't know whose nice little farm that was. Rhonda, any idea what that was? That's like a ghost slide. That's never happened before. What's that? No, she's just got there. She's got mute on. She's like, we don't know.
Oh, sorry, Ange. I don't know what happened there. It's my parents' farm.
Oh, that's really nice. That's nice, Rhonda. It's at least it was very appropriate, the photo. Conservation authorities and lands owned by the Conservation Authority, duties under the Clean Water Act, as well as other programs that are prescribed by regulation. But conservation authorities, even under the new amendments, may still enter into agreements with participating municipalities and provide other programs and services as advisable for furthering the purposes of the Act. And that's, again, subject to regulation. So there's a lot of details that are still to be heard. But the final one here says that conservation authorities must enter into agreements with every participating municipality if municipal funding is needed to cover the costs of any program or services. So this is where, you know, there could be in the future, I think we've always had very good governance, and we've had very good participation, not only from the committees, but from the board as well, and a lot of members seeking to do what's best for our watershed. But this is the type of area where in the future for programs and services such as the Clean Water Act, there's not another, or sorry, the Clean Water Program, there's not another enabling program. This is the type of area where we might need to have some additional types of discussions about what would be best for the watershed in terms of programs and services like we deliver under this particular committee. Next slide. There are some other things regarding to the Local Planning Act Tribunal, where we used to bring a number of appeals from the Conservation Authority, that would be about floodplains, etc., to first to our board and then to the Mining and Lands Commissioner. There's now a requirement to put everything through the Local Planning Appeals Tribunal. And I don't necessarily think that all of that is a bad thing. Just hopefully the tribunal will have, one, the expertise to deal with the very specific matters of floodplain fill and floodplain change based on development applications, as well as the capacity in terms of not creating additional delays for those hearings, because the Local Planning and Appeals Tribunal is rather busy itself adjudicating a number of planning matters. Next slide. There's also an ability, and this is novel, and this is something that's been a lot of discussion happening, similar to the Ministry of Municipal Affairs and Housing and their ability to issue an MZO or a municipal zoning order. The Minister of Natural Resources would now have a similar power. So that would include issuing a minister's decision for those decisions in the floodplain. So this is something rather interesting. I think this is something that will be discussed quite extensively at the hearings. And it's also something that in our watershed, because we had so many areas along the Ottawa River that, number one, were not part of a Conservation Authority jurisdiction, and number two, recently experienced flooding, there's a lot of concern for municipalities, I think, about what the liability will be if a minister makes a decision to allow floodplain or allow development in areas that may be somewhat unsuitable for development, and that's quite a challenge, and something that we'll look actively to hear the comments on that. Next slide. Thank you. And again, the minister can intercede on behalf of the Conservation Authority, and the decisions must be made within 20 days of receiving a notice. So we will have to make sure all of our decisions are issued in a timely fashion. Having said that, we haven't much challenge with timelines, and we haven't many challenges that have ever been even brought to the board. We've only had one hearing in front of the board, and that was one to approve a permit with conditions. So we anticipate that some of these, while they will have big impact in some areas, for the most part for us, we are working towards simply making sure that we can work with the decisions in the watershed as they come out. Next slide. Rhonda, that's yours, but I'm happy to take any questions, and there's a couple other things I wanted to say just that have changed since the presentation. One is, if you wish to make submissions, I think, Rhonda, did that already go out to Clean Water?
Yes, it did.
So if folks wanted to make submissions, the government is accepting submissions, I believe, until December 2nd, which is Wednesday. So if you want to make any written submissions, you can certainly do that at the link that Rhonda provided. And I think that's, it's an opportunity. The other thing is, there have been, I did see some fairly extensive publications in the Toronto Star over the weekend where a number of environmental groups have requested that Schedule 6 be removed from the budget bill. And the other thing that came out is a letter from the large municipal mayors requesting the same thing. So that came out on Friday as well. So there's a large municipal mayors caucus, and they've also requested the removal of Schedule 6. So in addition to conservation authorities talking about it, the municipalities, especially large municipalities, as well as AMO, have come out on some positions on the removal of Schedule 6 to allow for additional consultation. So I'm happy to take any questions.
Any questions for Angela at this time?
Yes, I had one for Angela, Jackie. Are we in contact with our local MPs about our position on this?
Yes, we have been really involved throughout all of the changes. So this is about the third time that these sort of changes have been tabled. We had gathered on the last one over 75 municipal and partner support resolutions. So I'm going to package those back up and send them to the province. I do know some of our municipalities feel differently about different parts of these changes. So we haven't taken a strong corporate position on this. We want to be able to work with the partners as these things unfold. So while some municipalities, for example, feel that it should always be an elected official sitting on the board, other municipalities feel they simply need the ability to appoint citizen appointments because they have too many other priorities within a small municipality, or not even small, a mid-sized municipality. So there's a lot of different perspectives. So we're trying to wade carefully on some of this. But at the same time, we have put together the support resolutions for the past, which talked about things like watershed programming is very important. So for example, seeing the whole watershed as one unit is important. Water, as we've talked about for source water and all the other programs, really, water doesn't stop flowing at municipal boundaries. It's important that whether it's stewardship or ecological preservation, that we have a network of municipalities working together, and that's what the Conservation Authorities Act is all about. So trying to keep those perspectives very much front and center. But at the same time, we hadn't come out asking for a specific, what you call a revocation of Schedule 6. So a lot of this we think we can work with, but there are some things that we would rather, be able to negotiate at the municipal level and certainly not see in a budget bill and a legislative change the way that it's been proposed.
Thank you.
Any other questions, concerns? Just a note, it doesn't hurt for you to contact your MP if you have concerns, as a sitting member on a committee that may be impacted by Schedule 6 here.
Yes.
And also, those that are publicly appointed that also sit around our table as well.
Yeah.
I think expertise should be selected from those that have the knowledge and not necessarily someone just because they sit on the municipality. I think it can bring a lot to the table.
Yes, and I think the one thing I didn't really touch on as the major, the major point for us is we are, very much in favor of being accountable to the member municipalities, where we are finding that it will add a lot of administrative sort of layers to our process, is to require that every single thing outside of the core programs and services be put into these MOUs and MOAs and then sent off to Toronto. We do really see this as, creating a lot of additional paperwork and perhaps, a bureaucratic process where one never really existed before. We've always been quite vocal on that. As the Conservation Authority in the province that has the most MOAs already, we sit currently with over 100 MOAs and MOUs in this watershed, and that's fine, and we've done that. But if we have to add many, many more, we'll either be well positioned for the future, or we'll find we have to add more and more and more of those. So that certainly adds a layer of administrative sort of red tape to everything we do. So. Yeah.
And that's something that you can, in speaking points, is this government is all about a reduction of red tape. And so
Yeah.
just saying that this will not do that if that's their intent.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah. So anyway, I encourage others, like OFA has made some submissions. You know, even though they're promoting this as a benefit to agriculture, agriculture has some concerns, especially in regards to municipalities sort of sitting and looking at their own municipality on a board table. That, you know, concerns us because that's not good governance as far as we're concerned. But,
Yeah.
sort of.
Jackie, may I put in another comment?
Sure, go ahead, Lawrence.
I always felt that our blend of municipal councillors and members of the community worked very, very well. And you had many points of view because of that. And I would sure hate to see that change.
I agree, you know, but, you know, this is a provincial, look at provincial CAs, you know, not all conservation authorities are equal, unfortunately, and work as collectively and in partnerships as South Nation is touted the Big East, and we do our job, they do their job well. I've talked to other CAs across the province or farmers within CAs that, you know, would love to have a conservation authority like we have. So kudos to all our members and boards and committees and staff. Right? Yes. They're the ones that make it work.
Certainly appreciate that. And if there are no other questions, I might stay on for a while just to observe, but if there's anything else, I'm glad to answer.
Okay, so we'll move forward back into the agenda. And again, we're still on C, request for approval. Item 2, update and approval of the catchment studies. So Kat, you're up.
Morning again, everybody. So my colleague Brent Harbers and I have prepared a presentation on the North Castor catchment study. Take it away, Brent.
There, hello. Having some technical difficulties. So our North Castor catchment study. So for this project, we followed a watershed planning process that is consistent across the province, and it sort of works in 3 phases. So our first phase is developing an understanding of the entire watershed by delineating and characterizing the natural, but also the unnatural characteristics of the watershed. So this involves a lot of studies, looking at fish data, natural heritage data, looking at water chemistry and water quality as well. And the process is that we would then take that information and use it for phase 2. We would apply different scenarios and modeling types in order to figure out how this vision of the watershed will be set for into the future, which moves us into phase 3, where our planners that work at our municipalities can then take all of this information and the best practices in order to make a watershed plan, so that planning is applied across this watershed according to the provincial policy statement and also follows some of the natural heritage policies and local official plans. So this project that we're going to speak about just deals with phase 1, setting the existing conditions for the North Castor catchment in Ottawa. Next slide, please.
So this is a map of the study area and the North Castor catchment. The majority of the catchment falls within the city of Ottawa, and the headwaters are actually within the communities of Finley Creek and Greeley, just on the west side. And then the river flows downstream just north of Metcalfe and eventually joins up with the Castor River near Russell and flows on to the South Nation River and onto the Ottawa River after that. Next slide. So we broke the North Castor catchment up into smaller subcatchments for the purpose of establishing baseline conditions. So we have Finley Creek in the northwest corner, Shields Creek in the southwest, Those two systems again flow down into the North Castor, and contributing tributaries that we also considered are the Ebbers Creek Municipal Drain, as well as Black Creek. Next slide. So we provide a lot of background information on the physical aspects of the catchment within our final report. But I wanted to just highlight some of the geology because, as you know, geology is really the main driver for existing land use, as well as what the landscape looks like today. So the two main areas I wanted to just point out are that maroon color on the western side of the catchment. Those are glacial-fluvial deposits, which are really essential to contributing to base flow for this system. And the other one being that light blue, that marine clay, which tends to be our class 1 to 3 agricultural soils and lends itself very well to agriculture. Next slide. So here's a map of land use within the catchment, and so again, we see most of our agriculture land use is within those clay plain areas. Agriculture is at about 42% within this catchment. Settlement, it tends to be in those more of those headwater areas for Finley Creek and Shields Creek within the communities of Finley Creek and Greeley. As well as we do have some rural subdivisions further down in the system. And then another sort of unique feature of this catchment is there are some bedrock areas that have lent themselves well to pits and quarries. So there is some of that land use happening in this catchment. Forest cover is at about 15%, which is somewhat low. Forest cover tends to be your remnant forest blocks within agricultural fields, as well as we're seeing some forest cover through the riparian cover, which is that area right next to the river and streams. There's not a whole lot of interior forest within this catchment. And then we have our wetlands. So wetland covers at about 14%, which is fairly good. I believe the recommendation to meet ecological functions for a catchment is to have at least 10%. So we are sitting at 13%. However, only 3% of that has been evaluated. So we've got about 3% provincially significant wetland habitat within this catchment, and then the rest of the wetland habitat is unevaluated. Next slide. So a quick note on, again, the riparian cover. So riparian cover, it is that area that where we transition from water to the terrestrial landscape that exists next to water bodies. This area provides a lot of functions. It helps filter out pollutants, keeping surface water clean. It helps stabilize stream banks, reducing erosion, provides really important habitat, helps shade the streams. The reason I'm pointing this out is because a lot of our recommendations within our report centers around increasing riparian cover within this catchment because it is on the low side. So these percentages that you're seeing, the recommendation is that watercourses have 30 meters of buffer. And so these percentages are the percent buffer or the percent forest cover within that 30-meter buffer. So the recommendation is that it should be sitting at about 75%. Next slide. So again, within this catchment study, our main goal is to establish baseline conditions for water quantity as well as water quality. So we're just going to take you through some of our water quantity investigations. While we were completing this study, at the same time, the SNC was updating the floodplain mapping for this area, for the North Castor. So great timing there. So there's a series of reports around hazard lands and erosion or erosive soils within the North Castor. Our 100-year regulated floodplain has been updated. And then at the same time, we completed a number of additional products for that floodplain mapping, looking at a number of different storm events, including the 2-year, 5-year, 10-year, 25-year, 50-year, and 350-year flood events as well, and looking at susceptible or vulnerable, I should say, structures and roads and driveways within those floodplains. So all of those reports are available. Next slide.
So base flow identification, this was looking into what Kat mentioned, water quantity amounts within the North Castor River and its tributaries. So base flow, to kind of explain what it is the amount of water in the stream whenever it reaches its lowest point in the summer before drying out, and that water we can more or less assume that it is attributed from groundwater inputs only. So there's no surface water in the stream. So we reach these points in the middle of the summer when it's hot out and it hasn't rained for over 72 hours. The water levels have reached a point where they're no longer going up or down. We can assume we're in what's called base flow conditions. And that's a time whenever all that water in the stream is essentially just from groundwater inputs to the stream. So it's an important level because if it were to go any lower and dry out, everything in the stream would die and everything downstream would die. And when the stream reaches this level, we're able to measure the amount of groundwater that's actually entering the stream. So we did this through a few different methods with the strategy of hoping that if we did all these methods, we could look at all the different results and holistically we'd have a good idea of where the groundwater was coming from in this watershed, and therefore we could map and manage them properly. So on the left side, one of the methods we used was modeling using a hydrogeosphere model at SNC. So using this model, we were able to come up with some maps that would identify based on a few different factors like the geology of the ground, where groundwater was most likely to enter our surface water streams. So that was our first hint. Then it involved some actual physical monitoring. So in the top right, we did actual base flow monitoring where we're measuring the volume of water in the stream when we're in those base flow conditions in the middle of summer to see how much water is going through certain sections of the stream. And then in the bottom right, a little more technical way we did was radon sampling. So using the knowledge that groundwater contains radon that's naturally occurring down in our bedrock. If we sample along different points in the North Castor River for radon in the surface water, where we get spikes in radon are likely locations where a lot of groundwater is coming in because we have a higher concentration of radon within that groundwater. So a few different interesting ways to look at base flow. So next slide, please. And here's just an example of some of the outputs from that. This was our radon sampling. The points there are sized based on the concentration you can we found in the water. So like Kat said, the geology at the headwaters, we had these types of geologies that were more conducive to groundwater to be upwelling in those areas, and that's what we saw at the heads of Shields and Finley Creek. We had locations where quite a bit of groundwater is entering our surface water streams. So we have these locations identified. Next slide, please. So here's an interesting way we kind of trialed this summer to try and find groundwater seepage. We used thermal cameras and we walked in the stream and we were able to use these cameras to find with pinpoint accuracy exactly where groundwater was coming up into streams, which is quite interesting. So this was an experiment for us and we were able to find out some limitations with this equipment. But if you look at the photos, the one on the left is obviously not using thermal and the one on the right is of the same picture. On the far right, you can see the dark orange is warm surface water flowing by. And then on the left side, there was a little pool where actually we found groundwater coming up within that little pool. The water was 3 to 4 degrees cooler than the surface water to the side. and then we can map that into the future and know this is a very important spot for groundwater coming up into this system. Next slide, please. And then another interesting way is using the habitat and the species that are actually found within the stream. So some fish species, such as the one showed here, which is a slimy sculpin, they're more sensitive to warm water temperatures. So we can use that to our advantage wherever we sample these species within a stream. It can give some hints as to potentially maybe there's some groundwater seepage areas nearby. We can sample these locations, and if we catch a lot of the species, it gives another hint that maybe there's something going on here with respect to cold water coming into the stream. Next slide, please. So another part of this project, we was looking at headwater drainage features. So these are little locations across a watershed that aren't necessarily mapped as water courses, but they can hold quite a bit of water in the spring. So you can see with the two pictures here, this is the same location. Obviously, it contributes a lot of water storage in the spring, but then when we look at it in the summer, it's dried out, so there's nothing there. So we mapped a lot of these locations across the watershed. Again, so for the future, whenever perhaps development or alternative land use wants to be done here, we already know which areas are important for water storage and flood attenuation within this watershed. Next slide, please.
Okay, so now we're going to move into some of our water quality monitoring programs that we applied to establish baseline conditions. And we kind of touched on this in our staff update, but we help collect samples on I guess, to contribute towards the City of Ottawa baseline program. And there are actually 5 stations within the North Castor catchment, which was great because we have a really nice, over 10 years worth of data within Finley Creek, Shields Creek, and also within the North Castor River, including information on nutrients, E. coli, metals, and chlorides. So we're able to take that data and, next slide, please. Take that data and compare it against known water quality guidelines, such as provincial water quality objectives. We're able to identify exceedances within those different parameters. And then we also applied seasonal Mann-Kendall trend tests to look at trends within the data. Next slide. Okay, so here are some of just sort of a few of our findings. We did see pretty regular exceedances for chlorides, sulfates, and E. coli at the stations that were monitored. Baseline phosphorus levels are near provincial water quality objectives, so exceedances in phosphorus tend to happen when there's a lot of water on the landscape after large rain events or during the spring freshet. But when we're in base flow, we're meeting those phosphorus PWQOs. We are seeing increasing trends for a few different parameters, including chlorides and sulfates, and we think part of that, especially the chlorides, is due to road salts being applied in the winter months. And we also saw decreasing trends for total suspended solids and iron. Next slide. We also took some of our very specialized equipment and deployed them for long-term deployments. So in this picture is one of our sonde units. So these units I think they're worth about $15,000 because they're basically a computer that can monitor many different parameters within the water. We really like them. We have to be very specific in where we want to use them, but we like them because it captures a range of conditions from base flow to storm events, all of the different conditions that that river might experience within the 2 or 3 months that we have these units deployed. Next slide. So the report provides, provides an analysis of findings for all of the different parameters collected. I wanted to just touch base on dissolved oxygen. So that unit, one of the parameters it looks at is oxygen. Oxygen is actually one of the best parameters to look at water quality and the ability to support life. What we were seeing is that those areas that are deemed cool water or cold water, as expected, they have higher oxygen concentrations, and of course this could be very important during periods where, especially in the summer months, when other locations aren't meeting oxygen requirements, so that fish and other aquatic animals can have a place to go to hang out and survive, basically. Next slide.
So another important parameter we looked at over the summer was water temperatures. So we did this in 2018, 2019, and we've been doing it in Shields and Finley Creek in the North Castor for a long time. So we have a good historical record of water temperatures. And once we have this data, we can look at it over the years, look at trends, see is this stream warming up, is it cooling down, and then this actually can act as another method for us to find groundwater upwellings within the stream. So if you weren't already aware, Shields and Finley Creek are both some of the coolest streams we have in our watershed in terms of overall water temperature. They are very specific habitats for species of fish and benthic invertebrates that only like cold water temperatures. So we can identify those very cold locations and again provide recommendations so they can be protected into the future and managed responsibly. Next slide, please. So as I said, fish, they're an important part of our sampling. We compiled through this project data on the fish species over the past 20-25 years using South Nation conservation data as well as City of Ottawa. So this just shows a map of the distribution of sites across this watershed. So you can see we have a pretty good distribution of locations, and each of those sites has a little bit different of a fish community as well. Next slide, please.
Okay, we also sampled the benthic invertebrate communities. So the small insects, crustaceans, and worms that live in the stream bottom. They can't really go anywhere. They're subject to the conditions of that water course, and they're really good indicators for water quality and habitat quality. So we sample them, we take a look at what's living there, and we use something called a reference condition approach to assess whether the locations are in good health or poor health. Next slide.
Okay, so one of the last things we did as part of this project was we looked at past projects that were done in terms of restoration and stream health in the North Castor catchment, and we prioritized a new list of projects for the City of Ottawa as well. So they'll be getting a table of projects that were prioritized based on the criteria that are showed on this slide. And this follows a best management practice for restoration projects. So if we were to do some projects in this watershed or recommend to the city, of course, protecting habitat's the first biggest bang for the buck, followed by removing barriers in the streams. And then we move on to projects like erosion and control and riparian plantings, and finally in-stream habitat enhancements. And we provide that all to the city in a nice fancy table in the report. Next slide, please. So bringing it all together here. So as I said at the start, we had our 3 phases. The first phase was characterizing the watershed. So we found out all kinds of interesting things from the City of Ottawa about data they already had or new things we collected, with the expectation that our information from phase 1 will then be used by them in their second and third phase to create a sub-watershed plan that will eventually work down into local official plans and help guide development sustainably and responsibly in this watershed. We also provided a list of data gaps and monitoring gaps that we suggest should be addressed in the future. including the road salt question that Kat had talked to, water budgets, so water in and water out of this watershed, climate change. So obviously a pressing issue that we're all thinking about right now. This should be thought about in future development, as well as wetland evaluation and delineation. So there's quite a number of wetlands in this watershed which haven't been evaluated. And one of our recommendations would be that these should be looked at in the future for their management as well. I believe that's the end. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Kat and Brent. It sounds like just an amazing project that has a lot of detail in it, and really think the recommendations will be beneficial to everyone that takes the time to review it, and also those planners and stuff in the urban areas as they develop plans. We know those areas are high pressure for development, and this is just great information for the City of Ottawa. Is there any questions in regards to this presentation?
Yeah, Gib here. Of course, yep. I'm very interested in all of that info, and so it must be nice to have a job like that for the summer and maybe the winter as well. However, yes, I hear quite a bit of chatter about the that little plan that you sent out, enlarging these so-called areas of maybe the floodplain or priority areas anyway. So I presume there's going to be some more meetings and discussions on some of it. Do you know what the follow-up is on your study and your presentation to the City of Ottawa? Mainly the city, because I think all of that stuff that we're just talking about is mainly the city.
Yeah, so we'll be, we have gone through somewhat of a review process with the city, kind of going back and forth and making some edits to the report. So for our Northcaster catchment study, I guess the last step is to provide it to the city. In terms of the floodplain mapping, I believe, Rhonda, I don't know if you wanted to touch base on that, but I believe there were a series of open houses, online open houses for the Northcaster catchment that happened, I believe, in the last couple of weeks.
Oh, very good.
Yes.
I wasn't part of them, but I do hear from the scuttlebutt anyway that there would be some questioning. And because, as you know, there have been a lot of people who have been in that area for a long time. And as you know, changes take place quite quickly, depending upon markets and trends and things like COVID, actually, too, as well. Yes, so I want to congratulate you on your work. It's great information. I can follow just about every bit of that in detail, because we, as you know, I live in it.
Yes, and
right by my farms. All that water comes through the north branch of the Casta River from the airport, Finley Creek, all of that, the catchment, right?
Yep.
Comes right down through there. When I moved to where I live in '62, in the spring of the year, the icebergs would jam up at the road bridge and back the water up into my barnyard. Now, we don't have any of that anymore. We don't have those icebergs anymore. It's a different climate, actually, than in 1962.
An always ever-changing landscape, depending on how planning or development or land uses, yes, Skip, always changing, right? So it's good to have this baseline information so we inform decisions to protect these natural water courses, for sure. Thank you for that. So,
Madam Chair, I can add on the floodplain question for Gib. Gib, I can send you the link. We did live stream and record a presentation for that public open house for the Finley Creek one. So I will email you the link so you can go in and actually view the presentation that was made about 3 or 4 weeks ago.
Well, that'd be wonderful.
Okay.
That'd be wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So the recommendation is up on the screen, but I'm going to read it through for those that are on the phone. So the recommendation is the Clean Water Committee approve the expenditures of $15,000 for completion of the development of groundwater surface water interaction constraint mapping project in 2020, and further that the committee approve the expenditures of approximately $14,575 for the completion of year 1 field work for the South Bear Brook catchment study in 2020, and further that the committee approved to carry forward funds of approximately $4,620 to the 2021 budget for completion of headwater drainage feature monitoring for the South Bear Brook catchment study. Take a breath. Further that the committee receive and file the final reports for the North Castor Rivers catchment study and development of groundwater surface water interaction constraint mapping project. So I'm looking for a mover.
Madam Chair, before mover and seconder, I just noticed a typo. My apologies. So the first resolution, the carryover for the groundwater surface water interaction, the amount says 15,000. It should be 3,124, and I'm missing the first piece of the resolution. So there is a first piece that says Clean Water Committee approve expenditures of 15,000 for the completion of the North Castor River catchment study in 2020. So apologies for that.
Okay. So I'm looking for a mover as amended.
Also move.
Lawrence.
Yep.
Seconder.
Tara here, I can second it.
Thank you, Tara. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Carried. Thank you, Kat and Brent, for that update. So on to the final update of the low impact development project, and this is Jason. Welcome, Jason.
Hello. Hope everybody's well. For those who don't know me, my name is Jason Symington. I'm the environmental technologist at South Nation, and I'll be providing the final update for the low impact development project. As you know, $21,000 was allocated to support the low impact development demonstration site. High traffic area was sought after, and working with UCPR, a site was chosen at La Rose Forest at one of their trailheads. Due to the high traffic nature of the site, the demonstration area is expected to get lots of views, and we will be using this site as a stop for bus tours, or also be able to direct consultants to view the site as to get an idea for future stormwater designs. Since the last update was provided, an RFQ went out and a consultant was chosen to provide a detailed LID design. The design will be used by UCPR for scheduling and budgeting purposes. Funding from this program covered costs such as site meetings, vegetation assessment, topographic survey, and soil conditions of the site. This information is required to basically see what we have to work with. We want to make sure we're not going to be killing any trees. Obviously, it's the Rose Forest. We also want to know what type of soil we're working with to ensure that we're getting proper infiltration. This project is going to be, well, a detailed design will be received soon from the consultant, and then will be reviewed by SNC and UCPR staff. And the design will be sent to the province for ECA approval. And construction is hoping to begin next year. UCPR will be funding the remainder of the project.
Okay.
I don't know if you want me to.
Any questions of Jason?
I didn't hear the last statement. Who was also?
UCPR will also,
giving money for the project.
UCPR will also support.
CPR.
United Counties of Prescott and Russell.
Okay. Thank you. I missed that part.
Jason,
No problem.
could you just give me some ideas of what potential design details could be?
Yes, they're looking at putting in what's called bar retention or rain gardens. It'll be a vegetated area, landscaped area that will also serve as a stormwater management facility. So the water will drain off the parking areas and pool in these vegetated areas, which will slow down the runoff and promote infiltration into the soil instead of firing it all off directly to the ditch and potentially causing erosion. So these sites will have vegetation that's will be able to handle periods of wet conditions, but also periods of drier conditions like during the summer months.
Thank you. So that might sort of give a better idea to those that are listening in on what kind of design is for low impact. I just wanted some clarification there. Also, will there be any follow-up monitoring of this type of design or project that could be utilized elsewhere?
Yes, we're going to be installing piezometers in the bioretention area to see, and also just so we can take water samples of the water that's going into these facilities and what's coming out, and we can measure the total suspended solids, the efficiency of these features. So how much of these particulate is actually retained in the bioretention ponds.
Perfect, that's great. Any other questions of Jason?
Yes.
Here again. Now these little the retention ponds or whatever I hear you chatting about, now we know that every development we do in the city of Ottawa, there's no stormwater can get to any natural water resource without a retaining pond or dry pond or wet pond. Is this somewhat what you're talking about? Now, I know that all parking lots have to clean the runoff water before it enters the water system. Is this part of what you're looking at?
Yeah, so we're typically with the stormwater management that you would see with these developments is that everything collects into a storm sewer and then goes to one stormwater pond facility. And that would concentrate any oils or debris that would be picked up along the way. Low impact development, the way that works is that we're trying to treat the water at the source and treat the stormwater throughout the development. So instead of having everything go to one location and then have one outlet that the municipality would have to maintain, this would be lesser of an impact. So you'd have some infiltration at one parking lot, a little bit more infiltration somewhere else. So you don't have to have this huge facility that you would have to maintain.
That is happening at the present time, is it not?
The larger facilities, yes,
Oh,
and
no.
we are promoting the low impact development as well.
Yeah, no, I understand the large business where you have all the pavement and you have underground sewer pipes and both storm and etc. But out in the country, if you decide to, if you have to put in something, even enlarging your, whatever the facility is anyway, and you put in a parking lot, you have to control that runoff water. There's no services around, only stormwater ditches in the road. Right?
Yeah.
Yes. Is this the sort of thing you're aiming towards?
Well, it's not a, it could be considered a standalone feature, but instead of having a way to treat the quality of that runoff or the quantity of the runoff in a mechanical structure, this will be a more passive, natural method of treating the stormwater. But yes, it would be for these single lot developments. Yes, it could be used as well.
Okay. Well, all I know is it's happening now anyway. I can't do anything without controlling the stormwater so that it settles before it leaves my place to any open source of water.
So Gib, my understanding, this system is to look at some sort of infiltration rather than collection to treatment. This will be treating, sort of infiltrating prior to collection. Like actually going in and treating it that way rather than, diverting the water and then treating it as a large body. Is this correct?
Well, I kind of like, so this is an experiment, is it? Or this is research, or what? Is it something that hasn't happened yet? I don't know. I don't know
It's
what you're
happening
talking
more.
about. I mean, you put things through peat fog, so you can do everything now. I'm just wondering what I just can't see what you're doing, that's all.
Yeah, so low impact development is occurring more and more in the Toronto area, for example, and it's becoming more popular as the technology is being used more, and as it's moving out towards Eastern Ontario. City of Ottawa does have a number of sites that do implement low impact development. So Museum of Nature is one of them, where they have permeable pavers in their parking lot. But we are trying to push this low impact development idea to have a better impact on the overall environment. So all development requires some sort of ECA for stormwater management. So you can't just fire it off into a wetland and call it a day. It has to be, before it leaves your site, it has to have a quality and quantity control component.
Okay.
Can I just add
I understand the quantity control. The quality control, somebody has to measure that, yes, somehow.
Yeah, there is a quality, TSS removal requirement, yes.
Okay.
So
all right.
There was another person that indicated they had a question.
I think it was Andre. I'm not sure if he still has a
question. Yes, I had a question. I know that area quite well, but is the project could be carried out, in a wetland area, or is it in the main forest area where the trees has been established for 50, 70 years?
Yeah, no, it's where there's 2 parking areas that are being redeveloped currently. So instead of having them the runoff running freely from these parking lots, they're going to go directly into this storm design. So there'll be no impact to the existing forest. It's along the roadside. Yeah.
Okay.
And Michelle, you have a question?
Thank you. Just wanted to maybe clarify for Mr. Patterson a little bit, just take 1 minute, but I think what he's getting at, and I think I understand, is that are we going to be getting credit for having low impact development in addition to the other types of measures that Mr. Patterson's talking about that you have to do anyway? The LIDs, very briefly, they are guidelines that are being prepared by the province, and we're not sure exactly which direction and how much they're going to enforce this, but we in certain areas of Ottawa, we have given credit for low impact development. For example, in Barrhaven, there's a special type of low impact development consisting of infiltration pipes under storm sewers, and we've given credit for treatment for that. So I think it's good that we have these projects, because then we can see how they work within our environment and see as we move forward. In Southern Ontario, they do give credit for low impact development for water quantity and quality. And in Ottawa, it's kind of mostly not, but sometimes we do as well. So it is part research, but it is sort of a direction that the province is taking. I just want to add that clarification if that helps.
Well, very good. I'm not against progress. It's just that it looks as though that this is already being done and they're looking for money for help. That's all.
Okay. Any further questions? All right. Thank you for the clarification, Michelle. And thank you for the presentation, Jason. So we have a recommendation on the table here. The recommendation is the Clean Water Committee approve the expenditure of $18,737 for completion of the low impact development project in 2020. And further that the committee receives and files the final report for the low impact development project. I'm looking for a mover.
I will move it, since the Larros Forest is looked as a model forest for Ontario. So I will move this motion.
Thank you, Andre.
I will second it since I was already talking. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Anyone opposed to the motion? Hearing none, I'll deem that carried. On to item 5, or 4, sorry, the use of the radionuclides, I can't even talk, to identify vulnerable fractured and karst bedrock aquifers in Eastern Ontario. So we have Alex Harrison.
Don't see Alex online. I know she had class that was supposed to finish around 10, but she may have been. Oh, you are there. Great.
Yeah, it's just listed as Rachel. Just
perfect. Thank you.
So Alex, have the floor.
Okay, perfect. So like many projects, I'm sure we've experienced some delays because of COVID-19, and then we're also working with some delays because of the strike with the support staff at the University of Ottawa. So things have been pushed back a little bit, but we were able to get out in the field first thing in November there and get a bit of field work done. So if you could skip 2 slides for me, that would be great. Oh, there should be slides in there.
Oh, give me 1 second, Rachel. I just pull up. Apologies, I don't have the deck ahead. Laura, do you?
Oh, good.
Second. Missed pulling that one up ahead. Go.
I might have sent PowerPoint slides, but it's okay. I can just talk about it. It might be in the email.
Should be. Is it showing up on your screen now? It should be.
I just see the report that I sent through.
I'm seeing anybody see a map on their screen?
I see a map.
Yes.
Yep, we see it.
Review of map of proposed study areas in Eastern Ontario.
Okay. I'll just talk around it. So as I mentioned in my last presentation, the project focuses on fractured and karst bedrock aquifers because they have this high permeability connection between the surface and the subsurface, which means that these aquifers are subject to rapid recharge and infiltration, which can introduce surface source pathogens into the aquifer. So it's important to identify these vulnerable environments to help reduce the risk to human health if and when those aquifers are used as a source of drinking water. So the hope is that this project will lead to a novel method for identifying these vulnerable terrains. And I showed in a slide last time, I explained the hypothesis that the cesium-137 and lead-210 will act as an effective indicator of these environments because the radionuclides fall to the surface in measurable quantities and because of their tendency to attach onto soil particles. So in most instances, this prevents them from infiltrating through the soil and into underlying aquifers. But in environments with fractured or karst channels, the erosion of soil particles can transport these radionuclides directly into the aquifer. So the hypothesis is basically that if these indicators of lead-210 and cesium-137 are detected in the groundwater, it would mean that there is a rapid recharge environment that's associated with fractures or karst. So last time I'd included a photo of a filter paper that had sediment on it, and what we had done in 2019 is pump water through the existing infrastructure in homeowners' homes and trap that sediment on the filter paper and processed it and tried to identify concentrations of cesium and lead-210 on the filter. And those preliminary results showed that there seems to be slightly elevated concentrations of lead-210 associated with wells in these sorts of vulnerable terrains. But we concluded that both the data set and the actual individual quantities of sediment were too small to draw that conclusion with confidence. So I had included a photo in my slides about the method that we've been using this time in 2020 with our fieldwork in November. And what we're doing instead is trying to collect a large chunk of sediment directly from the source, so from the well itself, and working at the wellhead. So far the grant money's been going towards funding that work and the development of that technique. So I had a few pictures to show the development of our probe. So over the course of 3 weeks in the field, we went through various designs. Originally, we had tried to or we wanted to test for turbidity and bacteria as well. But in order to do that, we would need to set up our hose sampling apparatus at an untreated tap, which would be either outdoors, and that would mean at this time of the year, generally people's like outdoor plumbing lines are blown out, or we would have to hook up at the bottom of the pressure tank, which would involve going into people's homes. So with COVID-19, we decided not to open up that can of worms. So what we opted to do is, like I said, work directly at the wellhead. And originally we planned to lower a 1/4-inch tube weighted to the bottom of the well to try to, with a peristaltic pump, fill the tubing with water and sediment-laden water and pull it back to the surface.
I found your slides.
Thank you.
Sorry
That's
about that.
perfect. No, it's all good. But for a variety of reasons, one being the cold temperatures, that tubing wasn't able to get to the bottom of the well properly. So we had to move on to a different technique, one that would help us sort of collect this the sediment from the bottom of the well. So as you can see in the slide there, version 1 was a probe that we were hoping would scoop the sediment from the bottom, but we had trouble with that because as we raised it up the well, the sides of the cup would scrape the well casing and we'd wind up just collecting flakes and the water would flush out the sediment. So I moved on to a second instrument. There's a video included, embedded in the slide. I don't know if it'll play or not. Perfect. And it's a threaded rod with a shield protector at the bottom. And so our hope with that was, you can see it did work. It would go to the bottom of the well and the kind of cohesive mud would attach to the rod and be protected by that shield. So as it came up, we would be able to collect the sediment and wash it off that way. That worked for some wells, but obviously not every well has such a cohesive base as this. So we moved on to version 3, which is a Wattera foot valve at the end of a copper tube, which, as you can see, had some leaks in it, just by nature of putting plastic into copper. But the principle of that really worked. We were able to get really mucky, sediment-laden water. So with version 4, we tried to refine it and use more durable materials, a metal ball valve there and with a set screw. And we're able to fill the tube quite successfully at times, but with some wells that had more wires and larger pumps in them, we had difficulty getting to the bottom because the probe was so light that it wouldn't just fall straight down. So version 5 fixes that problem, adds some weight with a 3/4-inch copper tube soldered onto a 1/2-inch tube, and we were able to get most of our samples that we had set out to get. And this was all done because, like I said, there was a strike at the university, so the machine shop wasn't working. So my supervisor and I were working in our garages trying to build these instruments to get the samples that we needed. So next slide, please. So then finally, these are the updated maps. The one that we saw earlier on our screen was the one I included in the report because our fieldwork concluded on November 20th, which was the same day the report is due. So as you can see on the right of the screen, a lot of the non-vulnerable sites were selected in western rural Ottawa just because the areas there are obviously non-vulnerable, so we're able to test wells there and get control sites. And we did select a few vulnerable sites out there where there's known presence of thin soils or inferred karst geology. And then in Alfred and Plantagenet, we were able to get 3 samples so far, but we have 2 more confirmed that we'll be able to do hopefully in the new year when there's a bit of a warm spell. And then depending on homeowner interest and availability and time, we're hoping, I think it'd be really cool to get a few more sites around that area where research shows that it's karst geology. Yeah, are there any questions about that?
Well, Gib again, never knew anything about it. Interesting. Lead appearing in water.
It's both produced anthropogenically in the environment, so the unsupported lead falls to the surface and migrates into the aquifer, and then it's also produced in situ with the decay of radium-226.
I have a question. I do live very close to that area. Are you going to consider nickel in the new result, or is it not part of the analysis?
We haven't considered nickel in the analysis, though that would be interesting, just because the work that this research is based off of done in 2017 focused exclusively in the Alfred Plantagenet region, so we don't have any geochemistry data, isotope data to really convince us to use that area. But now that we have this sort of sampling, it would be interesting to expand it a little bit more for sure.
Because I do know that in some area in that stretch there are some high concentration of nickel, which nobody seems to know why.
It is interesting.
Jackie, you're muted.
I have a question.
Sure, go ahead.
In the sampling locations in Untitled, why was that region selected? Is it because there's a cement plant debate going in that area, or is it because there's a quarry? Because there are also other quarries in Wendover that could have been selected.
My understanding has been that because there was a cement plant work being done there, research had been done in 2017 to investigate the groundwater and the kind of impact that activity would have on it. So again, because we had that kind of information prior, we were able to draw conclusive conclusions that we were confident in, saying that this area is impacted by this kind of vulnerability, sees that rapid recharge and infiltration.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, no problem.
Any further questions? Any further questions?
I just have one, Madam Chair, just to clarify the funding. Alex, I see on the second page of your report the third page for your budget, you have the EOWRP funding at 2,780, and your opening recommendation was to carry approximately 3,000 to the 2021 budget. So I just wanted to confirm if 2,780 was your final amount, or if you're asking to carry the remaining 220 to next year.
I'm not entirely sure how it works, so I figure carry the full amount because I haven't gone through the numbers and added everything up yet to see what our final numbers are, but that was kind of like the updated budget that I was including now that we sort of changed our direction with COVID-19 and everything.
Okay, so do you still have work to complete on this in 2021 that you would like to carry the balance forward?
Just some of that additional testing in Alfred Plantagenet, so there would be a small amount of money that would need to be there to support that funding.
So just a note on the previous financial statement that that's not accounted for, but I will pick that up in our final year-end financial statement. So the recommendation will be to carry forward the balance of unspent funding to 2021, just to clarify.
Okay. Thank you.
So the recommendation is the Clean Water Committee approved to carry forward the remaining funds to the 2021 budget for the use of the radon nuclides to identify vulnerable, fractured, and karst bedrock aquifers in Eastern Ontario completion.
It's new to me, but I have land in Plantagenet, so I would recommend that I move that they get that funding for the rest of the project.
Move for the carry forward.
Yes.
Gibb, seconded by
I'll second it, Andre.
Andre. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Deem that carried. Okay, on to item 5, SNC 155 Weather Station Project update. Catherine.
Hello, everyone again. So I did update, or I provided the picture of the station. So again, the project was successful. We came in within budget and within the timelines. So project is complete.
Thank you for that. Any questions in regards to that? Hearing none. So the recommendation is the Clean Water Committee approve the final report and expenditures of $9,500 for this SNC 15 Weather Station project in 2020. I'm looking for a mover.
I so move, Lawrence.
Lawrence, seconded
Yes.
by
Alan.
Alan, thank you. Any further questions, discussions? Hearing none. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Deem that carried. Just give me 1 minute. I somehow saying I have 8% low battery, and I don't want to lose everybody. Just. Sorry about that. I'm plugged in and hoping nothing happens. I don't lose you. Okay.
You're still there.
I know, but 8% can go quick if I'm not plugged in. South Nation River Watershed Water Budget update, phase 1. Kat, you're back on.
Yes. So we were successful in receiving some EWRP funding towards updating the South Nation River Watershed water budget. And so a few years ago, I guess 2017, we secured an agri-risk grant from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada and developed a hydrologic model with Aquanti. And that model is state-of-the-art 3D model that takes into consideration our terrestrial landscape, the aquatic landscape, and couples it with weather information. And so at that time, the main purpose of that groundwater surface water model was to assist with forecasting for our flood forecasting and warning program. But it's a very powerful model and it has many additional capabilities. And we would like to use it to update the South Nation River water budget that was last updated in, I believe, I think 2006 as part of the source water protection. So at this point, we've entered into a contract with Aquanti. Again, that's the consultants that developed the initial model. And we currently have them updating the model infrastructure for us. And that includes calibration with some additional field data that we've collected. That includes some forecasted land use models that they've received from Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. So forecasting what land use might look like into 2050 and 2100. It also includes them running through a number of additional storm events that also incorporate climate change variables into it. So Aquanti is due to have that model infrastructure complete by the end of December, and then they're going to provide it to us. And our hydrogeologist at that time has some additional modeling work that he will complete as part of this project. So we are looking to carry funds forward into 2021 and anticipate this this project to be completed by June of 2021.
Any questions in this regard for Kat? Hearing none. So the recommendation is the Clean Water Committee receive and file the SNC water budget update, and further that the committee approve to carry forward funds of approximately 9,500 to the 2021 budget for project completion, as Kat indicated, sometime in June. I'm looking for a mover.
It's Tara. I'll move it.
Thank you, Tara. Seconder?
Alan.
Thanks, Alan. Any further discussion? Questions? Hearing none. Anyone opposed? Hearing none. Deem it carried. Thank you, Kat. So on to 7, Lagoon Effluent Tree Irrigation and Evapotranspiration Study. Chris, are you on the line?
Yeah, hello.
Hi, Chris.
Hey. So I'll just give an update on what we basically were setting the system up this year. I was hoping to get the trees planted, but we weren't able to order them in time. But what we did do is we rebuilt the dock to put and bought the pumps, set up the pumping system, fixed the electricity. Found out that there was a leak in the line running from the lagoon to the wetland. We had that repaired, and then also I replaced the roof on the electric shack because it was leaking. So basically, we restarted the system. Everything's operating now. So we're ready to start our research project in the spring. So I'm just recommending that we push the funding through to next year, and then hopefully I'll actually be able to use it again to match it with further funds as the project goes forward. Just a comment on the, we've been doing lit review with the grad student, and based on I guess similar work in terms of irrigating wastewater, we can hypothesize that we should be able to evapotranspirate 0.75 meters of water per surface area over the growing season in the second year of the hybrid poplar plantation and going forward after that. So in terms of the capacity of Alfred, then if we wanted to increase or use 10% of the wastewater produced, we would need 3.5 hectares of trees. So basically, for every 3.5 hectares that you set up an irrigation system, you can increase your town's wastewater capacity by 10%. So this is a very interesting way of growing your treatment system as the population grows at a relatively low cost compared to your typical municipal wastewater upgrades. So I think there is some hope here as this being a low-cost technology which increases tree cover and recharges the groundwater directly and to a certain extent as well.
Thank you, Chris. Any questions?
Chris, it's Andre. Living in the town of Alfred, I'm quite interested in this project. What kind of trees are you looking at? Poplars or coniferous or whatever?
Yeah, hybrid poplars have the highest evapotranspiration rate, and they do well in relatively wet soils. So there's different types of hybrid poplars. We have recommended, I guess, cultivar from the Fergus Tree Nursery. So we were, based on their recommendation, is the kind of trees we'll be ordering.
Thank you.
Any further questions?
Just a little bit of a question from Gib here, that how big of an area does it work? I mean, does it, for instance, on a 2-acre building lot, does this system have any advantage by feeding your trees that you do have on 1 acre of it to alleviate some of the gray water?
Yeah, so it's really based on the amount of flow that you produce. So we're looking at, based on the literature, you can take 0.75 meters, okay, so 75 centimeters of water per year, and irrigate over the growing season. So you'd have to calculate how much flow you're producing, and then calculate the area you'd need. And if you have sufficient area, then this could potentially be a system. There are approved systems using willows in Denmark that take primary treated domestic wastewater. So you're taking your septic, after the septic tank, they're putting the water into a willow field, and that's basically evapotranspirating it in the summer. And I guess in Denmark the temperatures never get much below zero, so it actually works year round. Whereas here we would only be operating this in the summer months. So
very interesting. But yes, that's wonderful thing about winter. It does slow a few things down.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you much.
Any further questions of Chris? Hearing none. Chris, can I just ask that you contact me on another, since you're here, on another matter, if you could just give me a call?
Oh, sure. When?
Anytime.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
So,
all right. I'm leaving now. Bye-bye.
Okay. So the recommendation is the Clean Water Committee approved to carry forward the remaining funds of the approximately of $3,000 to the 2021 budget for project completion. Ray has raised his hand. Are you moving, Ray? Just nod your head. No?
It's Andre, I move it.
I'll second it. Give Patterson will second it.
Okay, so I just want to clarify, Ray, you had your hand up. Were you moving? You must be muted. Are you muted? He looks frozen.
And I'm showing him muted on my screen as well.
Yeah, so I'm going to say Ray and Andre, because Ray had his hand up first. Thank you, though, Gib. Any further questions? I guess none. So any opposition? Hearing none, I'm going to say that's carried. So on to item D, and we're on page 27 and 29 to 29 of your agenda package. This is a request for approvals from the Ottawa Rural Clean Water Grant Project. So start with the application.
Good morning, everyone. It's Lori here. So I have the first project is landowner would like to decommission 2 wells when she purchased the property in 2016. Both wells have run dry on her, and so she would like to decommission them, and she's recently put in a new well. So the first one is 0520-2310 DDA, that's well 1. And the recommendation will be as follows. The Clean Water Committee conditionally approve at a grant rate of 90% to a maximum grant of, and this is, you'll notice on your agenda, the amount was 1,100. I need to change that. The grant request is 990, pending funding availability. If you'd like me to read that again, I can.
So just to remind everyone that the Ottawa Rural Clean Water Program is fully allocated. So any approvals we do now puts the projects on a waiting list for funding when it becomes available.
Thank you for that, Rhonda. So any questions regarding this project? No questions. Looking for a mover.
Also move, Lawrence.
Lawrence, seconded.
Gib.
Thanks, Gib. Any further discussion? Anyone opposed? Hearing none. That's carried to be put on the waiting list.
This is well number 2, same landowner. Recommendation is Clean Water Committee conditionally approve at a grant rate of 90% to a maximum grant of $990, pending funding availability.
I'd move that one again, Lawrence.
Lawrence?
I'll help out. Give Patterson.
Thanks, Gib. Any questions? Hearing none. Any opposition? Hearing none. Carried.
This next project will be for a cover crop, and it is Andre's.
Oh, sorry. Okay, this is a cover crop request which came in, I believe, in late September. It has already been seeded to winter wheat and radishes. It has less than the 20 acres maximum. I believe it's 18 acres. It's not very clear on the on my screen, but if I recall, it's 18 acres, and that's about all I know. There were no site visit on this one.
Any questions?
So just to clarify, Madam Chair, if it's 18 acres, the maximum grant would be $900 at $50 an acre.
Thank you, Rhonda. So at this point, we're looking for a mover. Ray, thank you. Second by?
I would so move, Renee Lalonde.
Renee and Renee. So I'll ask now if there's any opposition. Hearing none, carried. Next item. So we're on to item E, the request for approval of 2020 Clean Water Program waiting list. Rhonda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. We're on page 30 of your agenda package. You will note under the discussion, we do have 14 projects from this year that were placed on the waiting list. These projects rate between 15.6 and 22.0 points that were scored at the June and September meetings. They all meet project criteria. However, we didn't have sufficient funding to approve any projects that were below 21.5 at the previous meetings. So of those 14 projects, I am recommending that we use some of the surplus we have from special projects funding. So you'll recall we have a regular grant budget that we allocate to projects. We also have a budget line item for special projects, and this is funding that we use for demonstration projects, for innovative projects that the committee would like to support, as well as for matching grants for external sources. So we didn't have any commitments on that funding this year, other than about $1,200 that we used on one of the eco-action buffer demonstration sites. The seeding we had done last year didn't take well, so we've purchased seeds to work with a farmer to reseed the grass portion of that project. So with the remaining funds, my recommendation to the committee is that we do approve funding to 6 of the projects that all score 20 points or higher, and that we deny funding to any projects on the waiting list that score 20 points or less. So on the screen, for those that can see, and those that are on the phone, on page 30, the recommendation lists the 6 projects that I'm recommending we fund with the special projects funding that are on the waiting list. And then the remaining projects that are scoring below 20 would be informed that their funding has been denied.
Yeah, question. The ones that have been denied, can they come back next year if they wish?
Typically, we've not brought them back. There's nothing stopping them from reapplying. Again, they would be competing against other new projects coming in. And unless there were substantial changes to what they proposed, their rating would likely be the same. So in most cases, we're over allocated as a program annually. So there's nothing stopping them from reapplying. It's very unlikely, though, that anyone scoring less than 20 would actually be funded in 2021 either.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, so the recommendation is on screen, that the Clean Water Committee approve the following projects on the 2020 waiting list to be funded from surplus special projects grant funds, and further that the Clean Water Committee deny funding to projects on the 2020 waiting list with a score of less than 20 points. I'm looking
I'd
for
so move. I'd so move.
Lawrence.
Gibb will second it.
Gibb. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Any opposition to the motion? Hearing none, I'll deem that carried. Okay, so we're on to the supplemental agenda.
Oh, we have one more report,
Sorry,
Madam Chair, on page 32.
Yeah, so looking back at my agenda, I missed something. So, request for approval of the 2021 Clean Water Committee meeting schedule. Sorry about that, Laura.
Yeah, I have that one again. So basically, we have a schedule set for next year. On March 4th, the Clean Water Committee meeting at 9, Joint Standing Committees meeting at 1. Clean Water June 7th, Clean Water September 13th, Clean Water November 29th, all 2021. So the recommendation is that the Clean Water Committee approves the 2021 committee meeting schedule as presented.
Madam Chair, if I may add, we had an interesting discussion at one of our previous standing committee meetings last week regarding the joint standing committee meeting. So we will reevaluate the date of March 4th. So there was a recommendation from one of the other committees that we consider moving that joint meeting to later in the year when there may be a possibility of actually meeting in person. that to do a joint with the number of committee members we have via Teams or Zoom would not be as effective. So keep March 4th as a placeholder, and we'll discuss whether or not it makes sense to move that joint standing committee meeting to a later date in the year. Also, as far as planning for meetings, we're assuming that at least for the first half of 2021 that meetings will be virtual. So definitely the March 4th and likely the June 7th meeting will be in the same format as today. Hopefully for the remainder of the meetings we will be able to meet in person, but of course that will be decided as we roll out through this pandemic. So at least plan on March 4th being virtually, and we'll confirm whether that joint standing committee meeting date moves.
Okay. Any other questions? I'm looking for a mover for these dates.
Alan Gruzzle.
Thanks, Alan. Seconded. Ray? Any further questions? Any opposition? Ray, you have a question? I saw your hand raised. No. I'm not sure what's going on, Ray. I see your hand raised as a mover or seconder, but still no. Anyway, so any opposition? Is your hand raised for that, Ray? I'm not quite sure I'm following what's going on there.
I don't see his hand raised on my screen, Madam Chair.
Okay, so I'm going to say, hearing none, I would say that's carried then. Thank you, Rhonda. Thank you, Lori. Okay, supplemental is where we're going to. The request for approval of extension of projects. I take that to you, Rhonda.
Yes, Lori will cover that one. And just to note, for those that can see the screen, there is an amended resolution. For those on the phone, we'll read it out for you. A second project came in just after we sent the package out, so just keep that in mind.
Okay, so we have a landowner. His project deadline was to be December 1st, which is tomorrow. Unfortunately, it's an erosion grant project. Unfortunately, due to COVID, things have gotten behind, contractors not able to get the work done. So I'm asking for approval to extend project deadline to June 30th, 2021 for the following project: 2019 CLR CW07 Stream Bank Erosion Grant approved at a grant rate of 50% to a maximum grant $4,125.
And your second project, Laura?
It is a septic project, and again, this is a 2019 one. Landowners having a hard time trying to get a septic contractor to come in and finish the work off. I have spoke to one of our septic inspectors on staff, and they have clarified that the contractors are behind. So I would like to have an extension for 2019 RUS CW01 project deadline to June 30th, 2021, septic grant at a rate of 50% to a maximum grant of $2,000.
Okay, thank you, Lori. So we're looking for a mover to.
So move.
Lawrence?
Yes.
Okay. Seconded by?
Gibb.
Gibb, thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Any opposition? Hearing none, we'll deem that carried. Thank you. So item number 9, the community engagement. We've had this discussion before. It's kind of hard to do in this year with COVID to get out and discuss your role as a Clean Water Committee person and what you do. But if you've had opportunity, now it's time to maybe speak up on what those moments or opportunities were. So hearing none. Anyway, I'll just speak to a couple things as Clean Water Committee Chair. I sort of wear my hat at different tables. So speaking about the program and concerns with the Conservation Authority Act within my own agricultural group, that's something I've been working on. Also some changes with source water protection that's come out. I've had opportunity to speak on those concerns as well. So that's pretty much my role this past year. So those are the type of things that we encourage you to do if you have opportunity to speak about the program, like the up and coming Clean Water Act changes, Schedule 6, do so to support the committee and the good work we all do together. So I'm going to move on to correspondence.
And on page 33 of your package, we were very pleased to provide a letter of support for our own chair, Jackie Pemberton. She's being nominated by the Beef Farmers of Ontario, for the Beef Farmers Ontario, a TESA nomination. I understand we had nominated her originally, or we supported the nomination originally, and I think there was a delay or a postponement of the actual awarding of the recognition. Yes, perfectly. So we're happy to send our support, and Jackie can maybe fill in some additional information on what the recognition is for.
Yeah. So this is the Environmental Stewardship Award that Beef Farmers of Ontario actually give out every year at their AGM. So as Rhonda indicated, a letter of support came earlier because I put in a kind of a self-nomination maybe 3 years ago. For a project that the Clean Water Program and Alice had done on farm in regards to constructed wetland. So I wasn't the recipient at that time. Beef Farmers asked me to resubmit the following year, which I did. Based on their recommendation, they thought it was a good application, so I did. Again, I didn't win, and so I wasn't going to submit again for a third time, but my local Cattlemen's Association were made aware of my submissions, and they submitted an application or a nomination based on from my local cattlemen. So that's where it's come from this year. So maybe fingers crossed, I might be successful. I won't know till February. Any questions on that?
I hope you're successful.
Thank you.
I would second that.
Mm-hmm. Well, if I do, I'll let you all know as
Good.
soon as I know.
Do you get $1 million or anything?
No, actually, you just get recognition, and then the ability to actually Canada-wide. So it goes into the Canadian Cattlemen's Environmental Stewardship from across all provinces. So, if you're successful in Ontario, your Ontario's submission to the Canadian projects. So, yeah. Hi, Bill.
Good show.
Oh. I think Bill wanted to speak. Is that perhaps?
No, I think we just lost connection with Bill.
Okay. All right. So hearing no more correspondence. I'm not sure what's connection there.
Am I connected?
Yes, you are, Bill.
I'm having a problem with my video, my machine, and I don't have any sound on it, but I have just called in, so I'm on the telephone speaking with you. I wondered if I might make a couple of quick announcements from the board.
Sure.
Okay, number one, at our September meeting, we have a new executive, and I'm not sure if that's been circulated to everyone. George Deroux, City of Ottawa, is now the chair. Pierre Leroux, the mayor of Russell, is now the vice chair, and I am the past chair. So that's the first bit of information, and that was effective at the September meeting, which was kind of considered the annual when we were able to meet in person. Secondly, at our November meeting, November the 19th, the board approved the budget for 2021. and it's just under 7 million. And they are moving forward with this, and it's being published, and you can probably contact it by going to the internet or going to the South Nation site. Is there any questions on that, Madam Chair?
Any questions for Bill in regards? Thank you, Bill, for the update. I'm hearing none.
Thank you very much, and sorry about not being able to get on till now.
No problem. Technology is amazing. I'm frustrating. Okay, so item number 11, the date of the next meetings I've discussed and we've approved. Anything else that you need to add at this time, Rhonda? I'm sitting at 1%, so.
No, just that we will confirm the joint standing meeting, but definitely the clean water meeting for March 4th, and we'll confirm the second one.
Perfect. So it was wonderful to sort of see those faces today that I can see and hear those voices that came on and moved and seconded. And
Jackie, good meeting under bad conditions.
thank you. So I do need a motion to adjourn. And at this time, if I don't see you before Christmas, have a happy holiday, however you celebrate it. It's going to be different this year for everyone, but please stay healthy and safe. So looking for a motion. Ray, your hand's up. Are you adjourning? Just nod your head. Okay, so Ray has adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Thank you. Everyone stay safe.
Thank you to everyone.
Bye now.
Thanks and Merry Christmas.
Merry Christmas.
Thanks, Jackie. Thanks all.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, everybody.